Good evening and happy Wednesday. Sorry for such a late video. I had a lot going on today, but I still wanted to come in and bring you guys the analysis on the IWM since this is what I'm mainly trading this week. Trying to stick to one just because I'm really seeing a lot of good things of the IWM in terms of being able to predict the movement. I also really like the fact that IWM has been a leading indicator for so far for the indices. And so we're going to see how today's movement down might affect the market, as well as looking at what we have for tomorrow and Friday, leading into the end of the week. So I want you guys to look here at the chart. I do have these daily expected moves updated. So to the upside we have 213.26, and to the downside we have 210.56, which is very interesting because that is suggesting that not only do we come back and fill this gap, but we come back down here into this equilibrium level around 210.67 to 211.03 for a possible movement back to the upside, depending on GDP tomorrow morning. Well, I've also updated your gamma flip level to 215.55, as you could probably guess that, from this movement down, that gamma flip level is getting higher and higher, which means that, it is likely that we are going to see some sort of pullback very soon on the daily chart. So I'm paying very close attention to that. And as well as we do have that monthly expected move up to 217.96 to the upside. So I just want to kind of go over what I expect for tomorrow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like we are not going to have good or bad GDP. I'm just going to give you a analysis based on the technical data. So let's get into it. So yesterday we talked about, popping up into this upper dealer cluster zone at 215, which is where the most gamma currently is at. And as we get closer and closer to our upper dealer cluster, that means that when we get into that area is when you see those dealers start having to sell their underlying securities in order to make profit, or in order to hedge their portfolio, or save their portfolio in some cases. And so you are going to see, in part, a resistance zone up at this area, which is okay. We did pop up, as we talked about, to this 214, 215 level, and we got that 30-minute pullback finally on the daily. You can see that we crossed down here just at open this morning, which, is our confirmation to say, hey, this thing wants to go lower. Either it's going to find support here and break back to the upside, or if it just needs to continue another pullback. So that's what we're going to be paying attention to tomorrow morning, of course. This gap down here, we actually didn't quite get to it. I don't have the post-market data pulled up. I really don't want to look at that until tomorrow morning to see just exactly how the market is positioning itself. But for the interim, we do have this gap down here to fill at 211.76, which we almost made it there. And as I mentioned earlier, we have this equilibrium zone down here, as well as the lower boundary of our daily expected move. And as you guys saw today, we actually had our daily expected move to the downside around this level, and we have this gamma flip. The gamma flip level yesterday was at that 213 range, and just as I thought, you have the once you make it to that negative gamma exposure, which is where we're at, you can expect some sort of acceleration zone. And so I bring that up to say this: if we somehow manage to get up to 215.55, you can expect to move higher, most likely to that 217.96 level. So I want to make sure that we go over both the bull case and the bear case, because the market's doing crazy things and we have to be able to prepare. So what is the MACD saying right here? It was doing pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to do. You can see we've pulled back down to that center line, and your RSI has really cooled off. It was really overextended on the 30-minute, which is why I was expecting a daily pullback or a 30-minute pullback. Does this mean that tomorrow we're going to go directly into our daily pullback all the way and do something crazy? No. At least for the most part, not considering GDP. Tomorrow I'm expecting some sort of maybe a little bit of pullback in the morning. Down to this equilibrium zone. We can come down here and test 210. I would really like to see us get back and test this support. This would be a phenomenal dip buying opportunity down here to 210 before making another move or an attempted move back up into this this daily zone right here at 213.91. We'll just call it 214, and maybe even get another chance up here to 214, which would be really, really interesting, because that would almost give you some sort of cup notion. Whereas if you are like me and love trading these cup and handle and neckline breakouts on inverse head and shoulder or head and shoulders, whatever it may be, those are some of my favorite chart patterns to play. That that you'll have a decision-making moment up here. And as I've been preaching over the past couple weeks in the Discord, this 215 level is very, very important. As you can see back here, we do have this as prior resistance, which we actually failed that movement before we came back down to that 206 level. So, something very important to pay attention to is, are we going to be able to hold this this block, this tap box right here? Are we going to be able to hold this? Or are we going to actually be able to find some support where we can actually extend that move a little bit longer into next week, where you can actually build that support and maybe actually come up here and get that and hit that gamma flip level before the market decides on what it wants to do next. So, for me, this is what I'm looking at pretty much for tomorrow, is some sort of test down here into that equilibrium zone on the 30-minute chart. And now, yesterday, I did warn you guys, and we still have to be very, very careful that if this thing decides it wants to start rolling, you're going to see some sort of movement under here, a pop back up, and you're looking for it to at least come back up here. And if it can't, you're going to be paying very, very close attention to see if that thing starts to roll down. Same thing here for the RSI. So let me back up real quick and just clear some of this shit. Now, looking at the gamma exposure data, it's really, really hard to tell what exactly is going to happen. There is just, especially in the IWM, there is just a lot of uncertainty. There is just, everything between 200 and 220 right now is just skewed everywhere, versus, something like, over here on the SPY or the SPX, where you're seeing you're seeing contracts come in at 6,200 and 6,500, where it looks like market participants are positioning for a end of the year run. That's, we've got a lot of time between now and then. So what I want to do is I want to stay focused doing this day to day, zero DTE, and just taking it one step at a time, not rushing anything, having a plan. Very, very important to have that, or at least understand exactly what the market can do. So yeah, and now I kind of want to go over what's going to happen if we actually have something negative in the GDP. So if the GDP comes in hot tomorrow morning, of course we're positioned down here in that 210 area. But what happens if the GDP just comes in hot and the market's like, oh my goodness, we weren't expecting this, which is, in my opinion, very possible for tomorrow. You might actually have this thing come down here to this 208.42, or even down to this 207.77 before maybe some sort of dead cat bounce into your weekly EM back up here, and then you could possibly continue lower and fail that move. This MACD is going and this RSI are going to really kind of lead you in the right direction on exactly what the market's doing. You'll notice that it's still probably just a little bit early because we haven't got that turn up or turn down. But I want to see if we actually go ahead and create that divergence down to indicate like, hey, this thing is about to roll over. We're about to have our little liquidity grab down here somewhere in the 205 to 200 range if we're very lucky. Before this market before this market says, hey, we need to make a decision. Are we going to, between the war being kind of over, and the tariffs coming back, and the tariffs coming back on July 9th, which the only people that have signed a deal that I'm aware of, at least, is the UK. So is that going to be a problem again? Is the market going to freak out? Is the market got it priced in? Or we're going to have a cut next month. I know the market says there's a 20, or the poly market says there's a 22% chance. So I don't really care about poly market, but it's a consensus of the people, and so the market thinks there is a 20% chance of a cut next month. I'm not going to get into that. I think we should have been cut quite a while ago, and still should be cutting, but that's a whole different conversation and a whole different topic. So supports for tomorrow, of course, you see this equilibrium zone down here, which I went over. You do have a previous month high that I have marked right here at 209.51, so you might actually stall out right here before, or you could even chop in here. So just be careful of that. And you do have that 4 hour and that 1 hour with the previous week low down here at 207.76, and then of course the upside levels that I'm paying attention to, the big one, 215, somewhere in that area. So especially if we hold this in the morning and we turn back up, if we actually don't get anything crazy on the GDP, that would be phenomenal. We can get in some nice calls, or I'll be getting into some nice calls, or we actually continue to roll that movement to the downside, and have maybe bounce, start building that structure. It can go straight down, but what you want to see is for it to start slowly building that structure. And of course, we're always looking for that possible head and shoulder that could have been. I'm going to come over here to the 2 hour chart, where it hasn't really turned down yet. And I told you that, I explained this yesterday. It's like you can get that 30-minute pullback, and this thing is still gonna keep going this direction, and it's pretty much telling me that we are still in a buy the dip environment. It's also what the gamma exposure is currently saying. The IWM did go negative today on the gamma exposure, pretty significantly, but the S&P and the Qs are still in positive territory, and this thing has been a little bit of a leading indicator. So I want to see, are we actually going to come back down here and test this tomorrow, or are we going to be able to come back up? The RSI is pretty cooled off. Just looking at the MACD and the RSI, looking for those divergences. I don't really see anything yet, to be honest, here on the 2 hour chart. The 30-minute is a little bit more telling. And then here we have the daily. So oddly enough, I actually got a buy signal. I don't have my my algorithm turned on with the buy and sell signal, but I actually got a buy signal on the IWM today on the daily chart, which is very interesting. So I want to see if we see exactly how that plays out. They're not always accurate, but I do like to listen to my algos because they've been very good to me. And down here on the daily MACD, something that I'm paying attention to, it's compressing a little bit, but as you can see, it's starting to turn down. So if we see that daily MACD cross down, that is your indication to say, hey, I need to manage my any calls that I might be in. That can be a usually the MACD is a little bit of a lagging indicator, but that's a pretty big that's a significant crossing to where it's like, hey, something crazy is about to happen, or we're gonna finally get our daily pullback, whether it's down here. It's still to be determined. So I am looking at this 200 level to hold. We might come down here and sweep that lows and see something like we did last Thursday or last Friday, where we came in and swept the lows, and you saw that reversal. So something I'm paying very close attention to. The market really hasn't had an opportunity to buy the dip yet. It's just been pretty choppy in that 5,900 to 6,000 range. So we can come over here and look at the SPX. Well, let's look at the SPY. Nothing. It's pretty much the same as the Qs. Like I said, the IWM is a little bit more of an advance or a leading signal. I do have my cyclic lines down here. I don't think June 30th it's going to play out. I think it might just, extend a little bit. We could have, the low come in maybe a day or two late. But for all intents and purposes, your daily cycle is saying, hey, Monday there's risk, and seasonality. Between the last week of June to the first week and a half of July, even 2 weeks of July, you do see some sort of little pullback. So that's of course what I'm paying attention to. I don't have the daily expected moves pulled up on the SPY, but I'll drop those in the Discord. Something that I am paying attention to is this bar down here. This 592 level. We are a little bit extended. This is the daily chart. This is, really what I'm paying attention to right now is like, are we going to cross down? We are up here at that weekly expected move. So, as I said, when you're up here at these weekly expected moves, this is a decision-making process or a decision-making point in time where you need to, manage your trade. We could get a pullback down here to 602. We could also fill that gap to 600. But with the IWM doing what it did today, I think the IWM is going to get a little bounce tomorrow regardless, but I would be paying very close attention to what the SPY does, because you don't want to see this thing just come down here and sweep this low and then not make that higher high and then actually start breaking down. In my portfolio, I am starting to hedge down here between like the 6,000 and the 5,800. If we get down here to come fill this gap, that'd be phenomenal. We have a gap down here to 565. I don't think that's quite the time yet. Over the next couple of weeks, I think is our best opportunity if we're going to get some sort of pullback before we run into July. So just to kind of reiterate, I know it was a long video. Apologize if I'm rushing. I got stuff to do, and it's already 8:30 at night over here on the West Coast. I'm looking for some sort of pullback down into this area tomorrow before seeing if we can actually pop back up. Even if we were able to move, I'm actually just going to get rid of this because it really doesn't matter anymore. I think we're already pretty much there, but I want to see, are we going to actually come back up here and get into our 68% zone of 211.66, or are we going to fail right here? So, this is my TPs for tomorrow. If I'm getting into calls down here at this equilibrium level, this PMH, or even this 4 hour, depending on how crazy it is, you do have your TPs. If we get into calls, 213.26 to the upside. We also have that possibility of going even higher. So, my game plan for tomorrow, probably, in the morning, see if GDP comes in hot, then, put city. But if the GDP isn't bad, I'll, wait till I see something like this. And then, $1 either in the money or at the money, or, one out of the money. It should be just fine in either direction. So paying close attention to that. Other than that, I hope everybody has a phenomenal day tomorrow. Third video that I've made, and it's really good to see all the success that people have had so far. Even just in the 3 videos, I'm getting messages like, oh my goodness, like this morning, 200% puts, man, 200% puts in the first 30 minutes. And I actually sold right here because that was my plan. I was like, man, I don't want to be greedy. I got these 200% puts already going. And then we actually went down like another $1.30. So, whatever. I'm just happy that I made money and it was a green day. And it seems like everybody else had a pretty great day too. So with that being said, watching that MACD, watching that cross up, cross down, watching for the rollover, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Holding this lower high back here, which is very important, but I think we just have I think it just wants to go down just a little bit more before turning back up, at least in the short term. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a great trading day tomorrow, and I will see you in the Discord.